Current status, we still have the trajectory going up. We have not turned the trajectory, nor have we hit the apex. Remember what that line is going to do. It's going to go up, it's going to reach a high point, it's going to tip, it's going to go back down. We're still on the way up the mountain. Number of infections that have been coming in, 80% still self-resolved. About 15% of the people who test positive require hospitalization. And then there are degrees of hospitalization, right? But the total universe that requires hospitalization is 15%. We use projection models. We have Cornell Weill, which is a great medical institution that does projection models. We use McKinsey that does projection models. Department of Health does projection models. The projection models are important because they are projecting the possible trajectory and projecting the possible need, right? So we're planning for a need. The projection models do that. The projection models are just that. They are models of projections. They're not necessarily definitive, but it's the only device that we have to plan, right? Follow the data, follow the data, follow the data. The actual hospitalizations have moved at a higher rate than the projected models, than all the projected models. So that was obviously concerning because that higher infection rate means faster, higher capacity on the hospitals, and that's the critical point for us is the number of people going to hospitals. Right now, what we're looking at is about 140,000 cases coming into the hospitals. The hospital capacity is 53,000 beds. That's a problem. We're looking at about 40,000 ICU cases coming into the hospitals. We have about 3,000 ICU beds. That's a challenge. What is an ICU bed for these purposes? Basically a bed with a ventilator. The ventilator is the most critical piece of equipment for an intensive care unit bed because this is a respiratory illness and people need more ventilation than usual. What do we want to do? Reduce the number of cases coming into the hospitals, slow the number of cases coming into the hospitals. That's what Dr. Fauci is talking about on TV every day. Flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve. Slow the number of people coming into hospitals so we can deal with them in the hospitals. And we are working on that. At the same time, increase your hospital capacity, right? So try to slow the number of cases coming into the hospital, meanwhile, raise your hospital capacity. We are working on both simultaneously. We have been from day one. Reduce the number of cases coming in, flatten the curve, slow the spread of the infection. We are doing everything we can on that. That's banning non-essential workers, that's social distancing, that's closing restaurants, closing gyms, just flatten the curve, slow the infection rate. One issue we had was in New York City where we had a higher level of density than we wanted, especially in the New York City parks, especially with young people. I've been as direct as I can and as blunt as I can on young people and the misinformation that they have. You can catch the coronavirus. You may think you are a superhero. You're really not. You can catch it, and you can transfer it, which makes you dangerous to the people who you love. But the New York City parks have been a problem. I saw the problem myself firsthand. I spoke to Mayor de Blasio. I spoke to Speaker Johnson. We said come up with a plan in 24 hours that everybody agreed with. They came up with a plan. We're now implementing that plan. I signed off on that plan. The plan is going to pilot closing streets in New York City because we have much less traffic in New York City. We have many fewer vehicles in New York City. Open streets. People want to walk. They want to go out and get some air. You want a less dense area. So pilot closing streets to cars, opening streets to pedestrians. We'll also enact mandatory playground social density, which is probably a new concept, no close contact sports in a playground, no basketball, for example. You cannot do it. We're asking people to do that on a voluntary basis. If there is non-compliance with that, we will then make it mandatory and we will actually close the playgrounds. We don't want to do that because playgrounds are a place to go out and get open air, but you have to exercise social density even in a playground. And again, it's voluntary. The mayor is going to make it clear that this is important to the people of the city. If it doesn't happen, we will actually close down the playgrounds. I don't want to do that, but we do need to reduce the spread of the infection, and that is what is most important. This is very interesting because the evidence suggests that the density control measures may be working. And again, we're doing this from projections. But look at this because it's interesting. This past Sunday, the projection was that hospitalizations were doubling every 2 days, okay? On Monday, the numbers suggested that the hospitalizations were doubling every 3.4 days. On Tuesday, the projection suggested that the hospitalizations were doubling every 4.7 days. Now, that is almost too good to be true, but the theory is, given the density that we're dealing with, it spreads very quickly, but if you reduce the density, you can reduce the spread very quickly. So these projections, I've watched them bounce all over the place, and I don't place a great deal of stock in any one projection, all due respect to all the great academics and statisticians who are doing it. But this is a very good sign and a positive sign. Again, I'm not 100% sure it holds or it's accurate, but the arrows are headed in the right direction, and that is always better than the arrows headed in the wrong direction. So to the extent people say, boy, these are burdensome requirements, social distancing, no restaurants, no non-essential workers, yes, they are burdensome. By the way, they are effective and they're necessary, and the evidence suggests at this point that they have slowed the hospitalizations. And this is everything. Slowing the hospitalization rates coming into the hospitals are everything so the hospitals can deal with the rate of people coming in.